Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week. I wanted to get Kyle Pierce on this week. It's spring break, and you know he's the new football coach at Barren County. We're going to talk about that at the end of the show, but we will have him coming on at some point to talk about taking the job for those people who didn't know that happened. So we will talk about that. Maybe it'll be next week or whatever. But yeah, we're back here this week. We're going to start out with a little bit of basketball related stuff because we're going to talk about the NCAA tournament and the national title game there. You ready for that tonight, John?
I'm going to take a nap beforehand. The game is at 8:20. That's a little bit late, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Should be a great game. Arguably the two best teams all year are Gonzaga. Of course, they're trying to be the first undefeated team since I think it was Indiana, Bobby Knight's Indiana
1976.
Team. Versus Baylor, who was pretty much the only thing that's really defeated Baylor was COVID. They were undefeated until they had a COVID shutdown, and then they lost a couple games after that. But I think overall for the entire year, maybe you can throw Illinois in there, maybe, but these are the two best teams.
Yeah, I think these are the two best teams, and Illinois' loss in the tournament I think was pretty much a shocker. And you know, I still think Michigan was probably a good team. It's just that it turned out that the Big Ten was a facade. I mean, and it was hard to know, you know, whether or not some of these teams were that good. Even Gonzaga, for that matter, even though they won those games against some tough opponents before their conference play started. I think you mentioned this, you know, before the tournament started, they hadn't played anybody really good in a couple of months, so it's hard to know how good they really were.
And they hadn't been tested except for the semifinal game against UCLA, and they were, to say the least, tested.
Yeah, they were. And UCLA, I mean, look, that team was a play-in team. It was an 11 seed, but they had to do a play-in game, and they were down in that game and had to come back and win it to even get into the regular tournament. And so just them getting into that Final Four was a bit of a shocker, but they proved something, I think, that is true every year in the NCAA tournament. It is, if you have a good guard or a couple of good guards, you can go a long way.
It's always good to have a good transfer from Kentucky who didn't play.
Oh, a little dig there, I guess.
Well, I mean,
it's true.
It's true, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to score if you don't play.
Yeah, that's true.
And no, UCLA was the game against Gonzaga on Saturday was fantastic, 93-90 overtime. And I mean, I'm not a huge Mitch Cronin fan, and just in terms of his style of play, I didn't really like his style of play at Cincinnati. Totally opposite of it. You know, he was actually Rick Pitino's first real assistant coach.
Yeah.
And they don't play anything like Rick's teams. He's a very defensive-minded coach, but UCLA was how they scored 90 against Gonzaga and they walked the ball off the floor was amazing. But that was a fantastic game in terms of – it's one of the best games I've seen in a long time, and I put it way up there because UCLA really didn't do anything to lose the game. Oftentimes you see, you know, the winner – you see games as a result of mistakes, missed free throws, turnovers. The UCLA-Gonzaga game were just both teams just making plays. UCLA did nothing wrong.
Right.
They made shots. They didn't turn the ball over. And I mean, it was just a fantastic game that ended not quite a half-court shot. I mean, he was in between the three-point line and the half-court, but it ended in it was just a tremendous basketball game. And Gonzaga withstood, the first close game. They've only had two games all year under 10 points, and UCLA was the second one.
Yeah.
And I thought they handled it well. And the freshman guard for Gonzaga, Scruggs. Yeah, I think that's his name. It is Scruggs.
Jalen Scruggs. Yeah,
tremendous player. Tremendous. I mean, he's top 3 NBA pick, and he's not only is he a great passer, but also a great defender, and he made the game-winning play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this Gonzaga team is a little bit different than their previous teams in the sense that they've had good players. Obviously, but more often than not, they've had I think one other time where they had like a freshman and it was like one of the top freshmen.
Well, how many NBA players do they have? in the past. They don't.
I mean, they make it to the. They've had a few that made it to the NBA, but they're not superstars.
No.
Some of them are barely even play.
They may have 3.
Yeah, and so that's a little bit different for this team. I'll tell you another thing about this Gonzaga team that I actually liked. Even watching that UCLA game, they are so they always seem to have 5 players on the court who can pass
score
the ball
and pass. They can score, pass. They're fun to watch. I mean, they're offensively, they're just so fun because they do pass the ball well. But they play at a tempo that I like. Mark Few is he'll probably live till he's 100 because he just does not get rattled, and he's a calm guy.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's his personality always. He's always just kind of been the opposite of Cronin.
Yeah,
just a total opposite of those.
Right.
I mean, those two are just totally opposite. And if I'm just a 17-year-old player, I would always go, I'd kind of like to play for them.
Yeah. Yeah, he does have a calming effect on the court, and you're right. I mean, Cronin is like a guy who's had like 6 too many Red Bulls or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, and his teams are always, the Cincinnati teams were very physical. Now the question is, will he recruit that type of Cincinnati player to UCLA, or is he winning at UCLA because he's kind of got some of the better offensive players that he inherited?
Yeah,
because at Cincinnati he could only go so far with his Cincinnati teams because eventually you have to score, and the game has changed.
Yeah,
you have to be able to make shots. You just can't offensive rebound your way to a championship anymore. So you have to make shots. So saying all that about how much I like Gonzaga, I kind of think Baylor's going to win tonight.
I think Jalen Scruggs is great, and it's not like we haven't had freshmen who were great and won basically national titles. I mean, I think Carmelo Anthony set the tone for that. We've had many that have come through. I mean, even like Anthony Davis at Kentucky, that group that came through, But Jalen Scruggs is he's a different level in a lot of ways. But on the flip side of that, it feels like Baylor has a combination of those players, not as good as Jalen Scruggs, but also just more depth and they're just a physical team.
Well, both teams are experienced. It's nice to say, other than Scruggs.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 21, 22, 23-year-old guys who've been around. That's one of the reasons why they're so good. I just worry about Gonzaga. The overtime win, and I think the game was over at 11:30. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing after they calmed down and ate and finally got to sleep, it's probably 3:30.
Yeah,
it's just that is a really difficult recovery, and I just worry about from the Gonzaga point of view, can they put another game back to back, because they've not been tested like that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And that is a tough recovery. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of like the old bounce factor. If you have like a lifetime peak, can you come right back with another one, or do you kind of bounce back down? And we'll see. I mean, it seems like to me they're in a tough spot right now. After that UCLA game, do I think Gonzaga's better than Baylor? I do. I think in a best of 7, Gonzaga wins.
Yeah.
I just think Baylor is sitting in a really good position tonight.
Well, and the other thing about that is Baylor had no trouble with Houston. They played earlier in the day, and that rest factor is a thing to be considered.
And Baylor has been tested this year. They've come out of a very good conference.
Yeah.
Big 12 was really good this year. So it's not like they haven't had tough games. They have, but they easily handled probably an overrated Houston team who just couldn't score, and they definitely couldn't score enough points to keep up with Baylor. So, yeah, I mean, Baylor is I think they come into the game with that big of a slight edge, and it could go either way, don't get me wrong, but, if I had to predict who would win, I kind of got a funny feeling it's Baylor, though I am for Gonzaga, though I have nothing against Baylor.
Yeah. Real quick, let's talk about the women's tournament. Stanford won their first national title on Sunday by a point. It's kind of hard to believe that is their first national title, because they've been one of those programs that's been there.
No, it's not their first. No, Tara has won 3. That's her third.
Oh.
It's the first one that she's won in close to 14, 15 years.
Okay,
Stanford's
maybe that's
won
what I was
3.
looking at.
Yeah. They've won 3.
I thought it was shocking when I saw
No,
that.
that's her third. And I'm a big women's basketball fan. I told you for the most part, oftentimes I'd rather watch the women than the guys.
Yeah.
This Final Four in the women's game, though, was compared to the guys' game, not near the level.
Yeah.
Stanford defeated South Carolina in the semifinals and Baylor in the finals by basically hanging on.
Yeah, they won both by a point.
They won both by a point, but they hung on in terms of they probably made in both games, I'm guessing, 10 turnovers in the last minute against both teams.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't get a shot. Against South Carolina, they're up 1 with the ball, turn the ball over at half court, and South Carolina goes in and misses the layup and then misses the tip. So it wasn't like Stanford got a stop.
Yeah.
They just got lucky. And then against the Stanford game against Arizona, again, they have the ball, don't even get a shot, turn it over. And then they had to, they get the hold at the end. But I wouldn't say that Stanford is the greatest women's title team in the last 30 years. They've got some good players. They're awfully big and long. But their ball handling was, I think their point guard, Williams, I think she had 8 turnovers in the final. That's hard to watch.
Yeah. It was not the best basketball, and I really thought UConn was the most fun team to actually watch play, but they did not.
Now Arizona was fun to watch,
yeah,
because they got after you. They're really good defensively. That their little point guard McDonald, I think is her name. She's really good. The left-handed girl, she was really, really good, and they just flat out. That's 4 straight losses UConn's had in the Final Four, first round.
Yeah,
the Final Four, semifinals.
Yeah. Well, it was fascinating. We're going to take a quick break. This is Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the boys' state basketball tournament, and we're going to start talking some softball, spring sports, that kind of thing. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we're going to talk a little bit about the boys' state basketball tournament. To be honest with you, it was not necessarily a terrific state tournament in a lot of ways. A lot of the games were not close. Ironically,
I think only 2 games under 10.
Yeah, that's right. One was there was 3. One was a 9-point game. Somebody scored at the end, but that really doesn't count.
Okay.
That one was 54-45 or something like that. But anyway, there was only one game. And this may be usual in high school basketball. I just don't know it. There was only one game where the team leading at halftime did not win the game. And a lot of times,
it needs to be close. If the halftime score is not close, that's probably normal.
Yeah, which is part of the problem.
I mean, there were some 40, 30, 40 point games. I mean, it was really not competitive in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The one thing I know, and for those who don't know, Highlands defeated E-Town in the finals.
Yeah, 79-60, I think.
79-60 is that there are 3 teams, there are 3 regions that you don't want to draw. And you don't want to draw the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that region, the 9th, which would shock people, has won 3 out of the last 10. That's Covington Catholic.
Yeah.
That's Highlands. That's Ryle. That's St. Henry. That's Newport Catholic. Scott. Covington Holmes was a power. You don't want to draw them. You don't want to draw the 7th. That's Ballard and Mail and and Trinity. You don't want any of that part. And the 11th is good too. Madison Central.
Yeah.
Dunbar has won it lately. Tates Creek, Lafayette. I mean, that's a good region. You don't want any part of those 3.
Right.
But Highlands. Everybody in the 9th plays the same too. They all shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
They like Highlands set a tournament record, 38 threes. They broke the all-time record.
Yeah.
And they got a player that's it's going to go to Northern Kentucky.
Yeah,
really
Sam
good,
Vincent, I think.
Really good player.
Yeah.
Well deserved by Highlands, to say the least.
The good old Bluebirds.
The Bluebirds, known for their football actually,
right?
But a basketball championship. E-Town did the 5th region proud by getting to the finals. That's a team that Barren County played earlier in the year.
Yep.
And 5 seniors and not very big, and knocked off a really good Ballard team in the semifinals, who had knocked off Bowling Green in the quarterfinals.
Right.
But you're right. It was not that competitive overall as a state tournament. No, it was not.
Yeah, the only game where the team that did not win led at halftime was Paintsville against Boyle County, and they led the game by 5 They ended up losing by 14. They didn't score. I think it was the last 5 minutes of the game.
And then Boyle proceeded to get beat 40 the next day, I think, by Ashland.
Right. I mean, so I think Paintsville was probably the better team out of those two. It's just, sometimes that happens in a tournament. But that's basically the only game that went like that. Almost every other game was we knew who the best teams were, and they really just put on a show.
They did. And, from the mechanics of the state tournament was that the maximum attendance was 5,000 they allowed. And I think they got it up to 4,600 a couple of nights.
Yeah.
Some days were 2,500, 3,000. But what they did differently, and I know it was a way to recoup some revenue, I don't think it was very popular, but they did it anyway, isn't that each session was a single session. So when you bought a ticket, it's for one game and then get out.
Yeah.
And in the past, you bought one ticket that got you two games.
Yeah.
And I know I'm taking my niece to two games on Wednesday, and that's going to
the girls' state tournament.
Girls' state tournament. That's going to cost me, I think, around $90 for 4 tickets for 2 games.
Well, that's very nice of you.
So yeah, it is. But that's how they are recuperating some of this. So, two games at night that normally you just only have one attendance for. Mm-hmm. If you draw 4 and 4, that's 8.
Yeah. Meanwhile, that kind of closes the door on the boys' basketball season. As you mentioned, the girls' state tournament starts this week. And
Bowling Green is our representative.
Yeah, should be. I think the girls' tournament would be more interesting than the boys, but maybe not. We shall see.
I think there will be a big Anderson County, very good. Bethlehem, very good, and Bullitt East, who happens, I think, Drew Bethlehem is very good. I think those three and the team up for the 9th again, and I'm trying to think who came out of the 9th. I've gone blank, but whoever's out of the 9th, trust me, is good.
Well, and I tell you, the thing about the girls this year is that we actually saw a number of these teams play each other during the regular season in different ways, either because they had a game get canceled and they would schedule each other. So we've seen a lot of them already play, which I think will make the familiarity, as it usually does, make the games more competitive.
Right. I think I named the 4. One of those 4 is going to win it.
Yeah,
the 9th. Bullitt East, Anderson County, or Bethlehem.
Yeah.
I think you can put a circle around one of those.
Right. The high school softball season got started last week. Right out of the gate, it looks like the Barren County Trojanettes are the team to beat in the 15th district.
Well, we got some great honesty from Coach Murphy when he came over here. And coaches are very reluctant to brag too much about their team.
Yeah.
Now, they'll brag on individual players,
right?
But they don't. But they generally take the more. I'm not going to throw too much out there,
right?
Because then if it doesn't work out, I don't want to look like overestimate our team. He said when he came in here 2 weeks ago, it's the best hitting team that he's ever had.
Uh-huh.
And so far in 2 games, I think they've proven that. They put up about 30 runs in 2 games.
Yeah.
Run ruled Allen County and run ruled Monroe County.
Yeah.
And from 1 through 9 in the order, pretty formidable. Got speed and also power. That's a pretty good combination.
Yeah. I think Monroe had 2 hits. Allen had a couple of more hits.
We need to see some better competition.
Yeah.
But he's got it. He's got it on schedule. They will at the end of
this week.
That's correct. So he's made the schedule where they will be tested. It's Allen is very young, not quite the Allen team of the past. And I don't know how strong Monroe is either.
Well, and that's the thing. When I was looking over it, Barren really has the most experienced team, even though everybody missed last year because they had no seniors last year.
Right.
So they have the most experienced team. Monroe County probably has the second most experienced team. They have a number of players back from a couple of years ago. They were young a couple of years ago. Meanwhile, Allen County and Glasgow were playing basically a lot of what would be JV players or middle school players.
They're middle school.
So, I mean, they're both real young. So I think that's kind of the dividing line at the moment for certain is that, I mean, Barren just has that advantage. And
and unlike basketball, it seems like you are rewarded more in softball with older kids because basketball, a lot of your older kids, how many times I've said this, just don't play.
Right.
They're juniors and seniors. If you're not playing by your freshman year, you're just not going to play.
Right.
Softball's not like that. You can play more people. Remember, you got 9.
Yeah.
And you see more juniors and seniors in softball than you do in basketball that stick with it and so forth. And I do think the strength factor is a bigger asset in softball.
Yeah, maturity is a factor
That's
in
correct.
softball,
And
not as much in basketball.
Not much in basketball, and players are just not going to play behind other people in basketball anymore, with a few exceptions.
Yeah.
Emma Hughes was one of them.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, it sets up well for them in the district. When you look out at the region, it's Warren East out there. I think they're number one right now in the state. And
yeah, that's preseason though. I mean, it's just voting based on what they did 2 years ago. I mean, I think Warren East is really good.
Yeah,
I don't know if
they may not be the best team in the state.
But I would put Barren up there with Warren East, South Warren, and
maybe Greenwood.
I don't know.
Yeah, one interesting thing about how this works out is the thing we talked about during basketball season. You didn't know, because looking at scores told you nothing a lot of times, because you didn't even know who played and didn't play in the games. You didn't know what the competition should have been, but you didn't know if they were up to snuff at that time. We have basically a year and a half of missing information. I say a year and a half because there was workouts before last season.
A lot of the coaches do know.
Yes.
Because of the travel. They did play travel ball last year.
That's right. So they got their time in the summer, which the basketball really didn't.
That's correct.
And so we do, even though we missed the season, we do have better information on these teams. But at the same time, when you look at games being played, you may not, and softball will not be as apparent in this as, say, baseball. We don't know who was playing in that game, but we're getting to the point where you can expect the teams to be full teams. So we should have a better just understanding of these teams than we did basketball at all.
I agree.
Despite thinking that we shouldn't, because we missed a whole spring season.
And you're not going to see near the cancellations in softball and baseball.
Right, yeah. I mean, we've also learned that we can play these games outdoors.
We can.
With the limited capacity and that kind of stuff. And as these vaccines are coming in, we're just getting, things are just better off.
No question.
So anyway, that being the case, I mean, we still would look at this and say, preseason poll, Warren East may not be the number one team in the state, but nobody's going to scoff if they say they're in the top five.
I agree.
We look at Barren, South Warren, probably Greenwood, because they looked like they were on the rise a couple of years ago on the comeback, and say that, those teams are, if they're where they usually are, then they're probably going to be pretty good this year. And usually when those teams are good, they're some of the better teams in the state. So, I mean, it's the top of the fourth region is going to be pretty interesting. And I do think that maturity factor for some of these teams like Monroe and I'm not sure, maybe Russell County's one of them, and Russellville, actually, which is a little bit ironic because they had a truckload of 8th graders 2 years ago, one of them being Amaya Collier. That was one of Barron's closer games that they won. I think they beat them 3-1 a couple of years ago.
I don't know. I've never. When you say Russellville and softball, that's kind of foreign to me. I'll just be honest with you. They've never been competitive.
They haven't been.
So we'll see. Can they compete with the big girls?
They were one of those teams that had a bunch of freshmen and 8th graders a couple of years ago, and they were the third best team in their district behind Logan and Franklin Simpson, which Franklin Simpson shocked Barron a couple of years ago in that regional tournament. But I would imagine, talking about what they got done during the summer and all that kind of stuff leading into this year, and they've gotten off to a hot start, actually. They might be one of those surprise teams, and some of the others we won't know about, I don't think, because
I just compare in softball how you play against the Bowling Green schools and Barron.
Yeah, right.
And Allen traditionally. Yeah. I mean, that's how I kind of look at it right now.
Right. So yeah, we'll figure out what that measurement is as we go forward in the softball. And what we learned in that first week is not a whole lot, and we won't learn a whole lot this week because other than Barron playing at the end of the week against some pretty good competition.
It's a shame too because the weather's great this week.
I know it was miserable last week out on the softball field.
I was there. I was at the Monroe Barron game on Thursday.
Yeah,
brutal.
Yeah, Friday was actually maybe worse.
I was so happy for a 4-inning run rule.
I hear you. I hear you. I don't root against anybody, but I do root for games to get over with when it's 20-something degrees outside.
Same here. That's right.
All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we're going to talk a little bit about some baseball now, high school baseball. Also, the first week of the season. It's kind of the same caveats, except maybe even more extremely so as the softball, because you do have different pitchers each game in baseball, and so you can have a team that has a good pitcher and they can win some games on the fact that they have a good pitcher and not have to score a whole lot of runs. But then they can go 1-3 each week, and you just don't. There's not a whole lot of measurement, and I guess the biggest thing about maybe high school baseball is how well does the team hit the ball? Do they put it into play?
Yeah, I think the other difference between the baseball and softball is that I'm pretty confident that in most of your softball teams, especially your better softball teams, those girls played all summer.
Yeah.
Travel.
Right.
Baseball doesn't. It's only a certain segment of baseball players play either Legion ball, American Legion ball, or some other travel. But for the most part, the travel in high school baseball is not near the same as softball.
Yeah.
Whatever reason, that's just the way it is.
It is kind of odd.
So a lot of these baseball kids that are playing right now have not played in 2 years.
Yeah.
And baseball is a sport that you almost have to play every day because it's timing and rhythm and things of that nature. So in a lot of these schools, I don't know exactly what you're going to learn for. At least it's probably going to take 2 or 3 weeks to get any semblance of who can play and who can't play. To be honest with you, I mean,
well, that's 2 or 3 consecutive weeks. I mean, a lot of them are kind of taking a break this week.
This week, I know, great week to play, but it's the spring break. Deal.
Well, and nobody went down and did the Florida Beach Bash and all that stuff this year.
That's the COVID.
Yeah.
COVID deal. So I would have thought more teams would have played during the week, but then you get into, we have all your players because certain families are going to Florida and this and that. And it's tough. It's really difficult to coach a spring sport because you got that and you got graduation and prom. You got 3 things that kind of can interrupt certain things.
Right.
And it's a tricky balance on how you handle it.
Well, and to that end, I mean, Barren County, they won 2 games by scoring a lot of runs. I mean, they scored 16 against Warren Central. They scored 12 against Cumberland County, won both those games. Played Glasgow the second game of the season. It was the first for Glasgow, district game right out of the gate. Lost that one 11-0. And there was, I will tell you this, I went to both the Warren Central game and the Glasgow Barren County game. I don't know if the coaches learned anything from those 2 games because Warren Central had a hard time doing anything.
Right.
And then, once things, after the first couple of innings and the tables turned on Barren in that game, you could tell they hadn't been playing for a while because I thought they started making just like mental mistakes and that kind of stuff.
I would venture to say that hardly any Warren Central players have played in 2 years.
I mean, I had to feel bad for them through part of that game, once we reached a certain point.
And they've got to play Bowling Green. 3-game series, South Warren. It's going to be a long year for them.
Yeah, it is. And then I thought the good game for Barren was to come back and play the Cumberland County game because that one was tight early.
Cumberland County has not had a bad baseball program either.
No. Cumberland County's like every 3 years they have a kid that will get you to the regional tournament on the mound.
Right.
I mean, and it's always fascinating because they usually do other things pretty well. It's just pitching is like the inconsistent thing. And I guess
small school. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to come up with 3 or 4 arms.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So whenever that one kid comes through, they're usually in the regional tournament. I don't know if they have that team this year. But what I thought was good about that game was it was a tight game early, and Barren was able to keep the pressure on, get the 12 runs. And I was a little concerned about that, with the wild swing of their first 2 games.
Sure. Well, and, 3 of Barron's better hitters just coming out of basketball, too.
Yeah.
Murphy and Tay Pointer, and I think Aiden Miller's playing this year.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just
it's going to take a while.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Glasgow they opened the season 3-0. I mentioned that they beat Barren 11-0 in that game. They pitched their 2 guys, I think, who are their 2 guys, Cole Bunch and Tyler Lane, closed the game for them. They put the ball in play and took advantage. They were aggressive on the base path. It was kind of I would say kind of a traditional Glasgow team. Even they usually don't score that many runs. But usually Glasgow's known for having aggressive base running, and trying to put pressure on. And they did that in that Barren County game. They came back. They played Todd County Central. They ended up winning that game 6-3. It was a close game early, and then they were able to pull away. They beat Clinton County 5-1 on Saturday. Today they went to Danville, played a team that I think has been averaging better than 10 runs a game and lost 13-0. So, again, we don't know who's on vacation.
We don't know. That's a hard read.
Yeah.
Barren, that's a good win for them because it's a district game. Todd County and Clinton County are traditionally not, I would say, powers.
Right.
I think it's fair to say. I don't know when the last time either team made it to the region.
Right.
And Danville tends to have a good team.
Mm-hmm.
So, but like I said, it's hard to tell. Baseball, it's you can't draw too much out of one game in baseball. I
Right.
mean, you don't know who's pitching, don't know what's going on, and it's you just, if you win, you forget it and move on. If you lose, you forget it and move on. That's kind of how we were taught. So you just kind of move on to the next game.
Yeah. Just keep playing.
And just keep playing.
You mentioned the Todd County and Clinton County not traditionally being powerhouse teams. I mean, the interesting thing is Todd County could have the best game in the history of Todd County schools, but they're in a district with Franklin Simpson and Logan County, who are usually two of the best teams in the 4th region. And so they're always, no matter how good they are, they kind of have to have a year where one of those is not having their usual year to get to the regional tournament.
True.
It's kind of like basketball in the 14th district in a lot of ways. Somebody else has to fall down between Warren Central and Bowling Green and boys for somebody else to get in there. That's kind of how that district is in baseball. And then, but in the 16th district, it's Russell County usually, and then one of those other three. It could be any of the other three, really: Clinton, Cumberland, or Metcalfe County.
Well,
and Metcalfe may be the team this year.
It hadn't been Clinton a lot.
No, they usually are 4th. As a matter of fact, we've already mentioned the fact that usually Cumberland makes it when they have a good pitcher, but since 2006, when this district's been set up, it's mostly been Russell County and Metcalfe County that have been the two better teams in the district.
Occasionally Cumberland.
And occasionally Cumberland, yeah. So, yeah, Clinton's usually the 4th fiddle as it goes in that particular district. Meanwhile, let's get back to the 15th here. We've talked about the fact that Barren and Glasgow have already played. Allen they have some senior players.
Got a new coach. He's the second-year coach, but it's his first year of coaching.
Yeah, he's kind of like Caleb Crow over at Glasgow.
Right.
Neither one of them got to have their actual first year. So we don't know. I would say right now we don't know much of anything about Allen County
Or Monroe.
Although Monroe's they've struggled right out of the gate. So.
Well, I think it's fair to say our district in baseball has been down the last 5 years.
Yes, yeah, I'd say so.
I think it's fair.
Yeah,
it's been dominated. The region's been dominated by the Bowling Green district and the Logan Franklin district.
Yeah,
and there's just not
Logan Franklin.
Logan and Franklin. That's correct.
Yeah.
And any of the 5 out of the Bowling Green.
Yeah,
have all been, other than Warren Central.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because they used to be one of the best teams in that.
Yeah, I know,
but it's not.
Things have changed. When the South Warren was built, there's a whole lot of things changed down there. Their football program, the longest losing streak in the state.
Right.
And their softball program that won a state title at one time in softball has had trouble even finishing the season.
Right.
And their baseball team has trouble winning 10 games.
Yeah.
So I mean, a lot of things have changed.
Right. So yeah, it's like you mentioned, our district, as competitive as it has been on the hardwood, has not been as competitive in the last 5 or 6 years on the diamond in baseball.
In baseball. But it's cyclical, so we'll see. Maybe we'll see if the strength of the district is better, and I think we'll know more about it in 3 or 4 weeks when you see our district playing some of the better teams in the other districts.
Yeah, and I'm as you mentioned. I mean, for some of these teams, Barren specifically, but even if you look at
Barren last year, really, I think in fairness to Coach Crabtree and Barren, I think last year was a year that they had some high hopes because they had really good pitching.
Yes.
And they lost, didn't get the season with they had 2 left-handed starters that were really good.
Yeah.
And
I think all 5 of their seniors were pitchers.
Yep.
And they had hopes on that. And I would say that Glasgow probably had some hopes on their season last year because they had a good senior crew. I think all of them were actually going to be healthy. Some of the ones that had gotten hurt in
baseball.
basketball.
That's correct.
And so both those teams were kind of probably had last season circled as a good opportunity.
So last year could have been the year that our district bounced back, but
right.
we'll never know.
It's lost to the mist of time.
That's right.
So yeah, it's baseball season. I guess at the 4th region level, I have no clue who the best teams are this year. I mean, just missing that year just kind of wrecked my ability to even know who's there.
I can guess.
Yes.
Bowling Green?
Probably. They were pretty good 2 years ago.
They were pretty. I think they'll be pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Russell County will be good.
Yeah.
They always are.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not? I'm guessing Franklin's good.
Usually, yeah. Matt Wilhite, Hall of Famer at WKU, he's back coaching baseball at Franklin Simpson.
And Greenwood, South Warren, one of those.
Yeah.
Warren East, maybe.
I'm not so sure about Greenwood.
Okay.
South Warren,
all right.
I feel pretty good about. Okay. Warren East may be good. They usually are, but I'm not sure. It depends on whether or not they have a pitcher. They usually have one, but when they don't,
Yeah, they've had some draft picks as pitchers.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, but I have no idea if they've got somebody over there at the moment.
Bowling Green is. I just noticed Saturday they played two look like traditionally decent teams, and this is with their basketball team still not back, and they run real 2 teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most people have them circled as the team to beat this year because they were in the state tournament 2 years ago
they're trying to win everything.
Yeah, they're just
football, basketball.
What was it? They've stolen.
I don't think they're one of the favorites in softball though.
No, they've stolen that Al Davis line, commitment to excellence.
Yes, I've had a pretty good year.
Yeah. All right, this is the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we have some coaching news. We mentioned it at the top of the.
This is going to be our smorgasbord of a lineup.
Yes, it is. A lot of it's going to be around coaching changes and that kind of stuff, though. And we'll just start off with that. So last week, I think it was last Wednesday, Barren County had their press conference, and they announced that Kyle Pierce was the new football coach at Barren County. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised because
Kyle's been out of it for a while.
5 years. He's been the AD at Edmonson County. Now, before that, he was the head football coach at Edmonson County. I thought he did a good job.
I agree.
But what surprised me about it was Edmonton had a football position open earlier this, I guess in the winter, basically. And they hired Smart, who had been at Grayson County, and Kyle Pierce didn't take that job.
Didn't apply either.
Didn't apply. So, I mean, if he wasn't going to take back over the program he had prior to Smith, who was his replacement, it surprised me that he came to Barren.
Well, just talking to him personally, I think this job has always interested him.
Sounded like it.
Yeah, right. And just for various reasons, timing is everything. You know, you sometimes you don't take jobs you think you should take because just the timing wasn't right, and he was raising a family and so forth, and now his kids are a little bit older, and he obviously missed football. And to be honest with you, I think our football program is in better shape now than it was at one time. I mean, got first-rate facilities.
Yeah.
And I think the facilities and schedule, it's not an easy schedule, but it's you're not facing South Warren and Bowling Green.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that added up to an opportunity that he sought, and let's be real. The pressure of there's not a state championship pressure at Barren County.
No.
I do think people expect to be competitive.
Yeah.
And especially against teams that are connected with you. But I think all that added up to a situation where he thought it was the right time to come back. And I like Kyle, and I think it's a good hire, and I think he's got an opportunity to do good things.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to get him in here to talk to us about it too.
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully next week. We'll see how that works out timing-wise. But, yeah, and the other thing is going back to the schedule itself, there's pretty good schedule flexibility at Barren in the sense that you have the 3 district games now, with Meade County, North Hardin, and Central Hardin. Yeah, they're ways away, an hour away or whatever. But just around here, I mean, you can play teams that will draw a gate.
Yes.
And
and hopefully Glasgow will be one of them.
He was asked that question, and I mean,
he's really no position to say anything at the time. I think he'd probably say, "Yeah, I'd like to play him," but but I think there are other factors involved. I'll just say that. But we'll see. Hopefully in our lifetime we'll see that game again.
Well, and I think I've said this before maybe on this show, but whomever it is that gets to make that decision, if you guys would like to come sit down in the room with me or with John and I, and we hash this out and get that game back on the schedule.
I think most people want the game, so we'll see. But Monroe and Allen are going to be – Allen's back on schedule, and they should be. That's going to be locked in, Allen and Monroe. Yeah, Metcalf is on the schedule.
Yeah.
So the schedule is it's not bad, and it's if you we're a 5A team that's playing up to 6A, but it's teams that you should play for the most part. And I think the only one to add to that would be Glasgow. I think the community would want that, but I think it's a good hire. I think Kyle do a good job.
Yeah. I agree. I thought it was a good hire when he walked out there, and I was like, "Well, check that out." Because the last few years I've gotten to know him as the athletic director at Edmonson County from doing that Friday night sports show, football show with Brian Webb that I did for 3 or 4 years, however long we did it. I did it, and so I've gotten to know him in that capacity. But I knew him as a head coach before that at Edmonson County, and like I said, I always thought he did a good job.
Teams played really hard.
They did.
They played hard, and he was. They played differently at times on offense. He wasn't married to the same system.
Yeah.
And I know he's good friends with Tommy Muse, who's been running the defense. So I think there's a natural connection there. We'll see what he wants to do offensively because we lost a lot of skilled players offensively. So we'll see what he'll do with that. But like I said, I think it's a good hire.
Yeah, I think he and Tommy are were both assistants for Ricky Wood at Warren Central. I think it was Ricky Wood they were assistants for, and maybe Kyle was an assistant for Ricky whenever he was at Edmonton that first time around. I don't remember exactly the time frame, but I'm pretty sure they're pretty close. Also, in the college basketball ranks, real quick. Well, before we do that, let's stick with Edmonson County real quick. Brad Johnson is the new boys basketball coach at Edmonson County. I think he was an assistant over there this past season.
He was assistant. Yeah, he was a former head coach there too. He
many years ago.
Many years ago, he was head coach there, and of course, obviously he and he did well there too. Won I think 20-something games one year at Edmonton.
Yeah.
Went on and won 3 regional tournaments in girls at Ohio County. Went to Grayson and was successful and coached the year after I got out at Barren.
Right. So, yeah, he's the new – they've got a whole bunch of new coaches over at Edmonton County. So, yeah, that's going to be pretty interesting over there. Meanwhile, at the college ranks, Roy Williams announced his retirement. And then
one of my favorite coaches because what I liked about Roy Williams is – and I also like Dean Smith too – is they always appeared to be – genuine nice guy. I don't know how many men's coaches are nice guys per se. It's got to
be hard to just be a nice guy.
They're all salesmen, and they all have to do what they have to do, I guess, to recruit. But Roy Williams always seemed to me to be sincere, earnest, and obviously did a great job at Kansas, won a national title at Kansas and a couple at North Carolina.
Yeah,
and just turned 70. And I don't think it was age that got him out. I just reading between the lines and some of the things that I've noticed or whatever. I don't think he's real crazy about transfer portals. And he lost one of his best players, the big, tall 7-footer, that freshman kid, that Kessler, that came off the bench. It looked like me was going to be a heck of a player. He decided to transfer like 2 days after their last game. And I'm not for sure if Coach Williams was never much on a lot of one-and-dones. I'm not for sure if he wanted to fight that battle of re-recruiting his own players all the time.
That's what I was going to say.
And he had a great line. He said, I've never considered myself the best coach. But he said, I always thought I was the right coach for North Carolina and Kansas. And he said, right now, I don't think I'm the right coach.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great line.
It is a great line. And to your point about the one and done, I mean, there was a brief window there where it looked like North Carolina was going to join that rat race with Duke and Kentucky and Kansas and so many of the other programs. And that window did not stick around for very long, and he kind of transitioned.
And he won a national title without that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He transitioned away from that, and that's when he won the national title with North Carolina. And
now it's not so much one and dones that one and done I go with a pro. It's one and done and I'm transferred to another school.
Yeah, I go somewhere else.
That's correct.
Well, and look, he almost won 2 national titles. One of the greatest shots that will ever be forgotten in the national title game was it Villanova?
Villanova.
Mm-hmm. Great shot. It's just that the guy at Villanova made a greater shot
That's
to
correct.
win it.
That's right.
So I mean, he had an impressive run at North Carolina. They're hiring Hubert Davis, who was one of his assistants. Hubert Davis,
another a guy that appears to be a really nice guy too.
I always loved him in the NBA. Whenever he used to do, I think it was NBA broadcast.
It's just hard. You just don't see a lot of successes with assistant coaches that take over.
Yeah, it'll be curious.
Yep,
it'll be curious to see.
I hope he does well, but it would be a rarity. You don't see it a lot.
No, it's curious to see how it works out for him because I'm with you. I think I've always liked Hubert Davis.
Yeah.
I thought he was one of.
It didn't work out the last time that North Carolina went that route.
No, it didn't, which is why they ended up with Roy Williams, I guess. But yeah, good luck to Hubert Davis. I hope it works out for him.
Lonnie Kruger, Oklahoma,
yep.
Illinois Chicago guy. He cashed in.
Yep. Yeah. After he got divine intervention got in there, I suppose.
Yeah. What's her name? Sister.
Yeah, Sister Jean.
Sister Jean lost her a coach.
Yeah. I guess.
And Bill Self got rewarded with a lifetime contract.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Even though they're under 5 Sanction 1 violation charges by the NCAA, but that's okay.
Hey, look, I
like Bill Self, but I'm just saying
look, it's just you're just pointing out the hypocrisy of the men's college basketball game. That's all you're doing.
It is kind of hard to imagine. I think he's a great coach, but I don't think I'd give him a lifetime contract until I figured out exactly
what that lifetime was going to be.
Yeah, until the issue is resolved.
Yeah.
But,
well, he and Will Wade are kind of in the same camp, except Will Wade's even worse because Will Wade's belligerent about.
And has been openly brazen. Plus caught directly on tape. And of course, you got Sean Miller at Arizona is still there.
Yeah. Well, those are the big 3, so to speak. The Masters begins this week. Is that one of your favorite events?
I don't watch a ton of golf, but the golf I do like to watch, I like the Masters and U.S. Open.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely tune it in.
You're like the Dos Equis guy.
I like. I mean, it is. I do like it, to be honest with you. I mean, it's. I don't really have a favorite. I'm intrigued by watching. I can't even pronounce his name. Bryson Chambalou or whatever, the guy that hits it about 500 yards to the moon,
Right.
I'm fascinated watching him, so we'll see how that comes. They say it's one of the greatest sporting events to go to. I had a friend that went, and it's cheap. Once you're in there, it's cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the few places you can buy a sandwich for like $2.
Yeah, they don't need the money once you're there.
Well, they had that one protest against them several years ago, and they said, okay, we won't have any advertisement. They went commercial free.
Right.
They go, we don't need any. So that tells how much money they got.
Yeah.
They don't even need the advertising revenue. Yeah, okay.
Well, that's like when they were talking about they needed to pull the Masters out of Georgia. Some of the people wanted them to protest, and I was like, you can't actually do. I mean, they can't. It can't be done.
No, the Masters.
I mean, Augusta is the Masters. The
correct.
Masters is Augusta. There's no separation.
Yeah, you're not going to lift
the
that.
PGA
course.
Doesn't even manage it.
No,
right?
you're not going to lift that course and move it to Florida. I don't think.
Yeah. So that was like one of those pointless moments in life. But anyway, so that's this week. We already mentioned the girls' state tournament is this week. You're going to go up there for a couple of games.
I am. All right, and the Reds got off to a good start.
Yeah, a punchy start.
Yeah. They got into their brawl. They fight with St. Louis all the time, and it's always Molina, the catcher for St. Louis, is always involved. Yachty, he's always involved.
Yeah.
But this guy the guy from the Cubs, the game last year, Castellanos.
Yeah.
I mean, he's pretty darn good, and not scared either.
No, I look. He took home on a wild pitch from a guy who had hit him by a pitch to get him on base to start with, and he flexed on him. But he didn't touch him.
He didn't touch him. But that preceded 2 brawls broke out in a 15-minute period of time. That's all right.
I think the Reds and the Cardinals should just open every series with a brawl out there by the pitcher's mound, get it out of the way, and just move on with the game.
They laid the hammer to St. Louis.
They did. I think maybe St. Louis should have just left him alone because it seemed to ignite the Reds, whatever they had to say or do, because the Reds put it on them.
I look forward to it. I'm going to go to the game again this summer. Look forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Not been there, but, we'll be there. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.